Hi, my name is David Simpson. I'm here with Gregg Lippa. We both teach courses for Themis, and I'm more of a database guy, and Gregg is our lead developer and instructor on the Java curriculum. One of the things I'm getting asked a lot in DB2 curriculum these days is about IBM Data Studio and the functionality that provides for us as DBAs, application developers, in talking to DB2 and the IBM suite of database products. And from the outset, Data Studio kind of looks like this complex thing, and you have to know a little bit to get started with it. And really a lot of that complexity comes from the fact that it's based on the Eclipse framework. And so I was talking to some DBAs just the other day and talk about that complexity and the Eclipse framework, and the first question I get is, well, what is Eclipse? And why as a DBA do I need to be familiar with this thing? So what is Eclipse, Gregg?
Well, David, Eclipse seems to be more complex than it needs to be for this job, but Eclipse is really a development tool for anything, including Java development, database development, all kinds of development, website development. So Eclipse is a big tool, and Data Studio is one of the ways that you can plug into it to get your development for database queries, stored procedures going.
Right, so like IBM's Rational Application Developer is a big really suite of tools that's built on the Eclipse framework for code development, deployment, source storage, and all of that, right?
Exactly. Interestingly enough, IBM developed Eclipse, and Eclipse was then donated to the open source, and the open source free suite of software is then being built on by IBM to enhance it and improve it and
To
add
enhance
value.
their own product offering. Yeah.
Exactly.
So when IBM started consolidating their different offerings, a lot of this stuff is free offerings in the database world. They also built that on this, or as they consolidate them, they're building it on that Eclipse framework. So something that IBM Data Studio has traditionally done very well is stored procedure development, which really plays very into Eclipse strengths as a code development tool to begin with, right?
Exactly. And it gives you the features that Eclipse provides, like content assist, where as you're typing in your code, you have this ability to ask the tool, what would make sense here?
Yeah. Control space.
Control
right?
space.
The magic characters. So if you're saying typing a select statement in the context of a SQL script or a stored procedure, you say select, list some columns, control space, gives you a list of the columns that you might be able to select from, a list of tables in the from clause and so forth, right?
Exactly. Very helpful in terms, and it does hit your database catalog in the process.
Right. It's actually going out to DB2 and saying what would be valid to put here.
Right.
Yeah. So you get all of that kind of built in, and that again comes from the Java development world where that stuff was already written and dealt with, or to deal with Java source.
Yeah, and IBM just built on top of it for their database world.
Right. So one of the things that kind of leads us into that complexity of the Eclipse environment, and one of the questions I get asked a lot when we first open up IBM Data Studio is, what is a project? It seems like Eclipse always makes me organize my work into a project, and if all I want to do is run a query, before I can actually even write that query, I have to create a project. So maybe talk a little bit about what a project is in the context of Eclipse.
Right. Yeah, anything that you do in Eclipse actually requires a project, and there are many different kinds of projects: Java projects, web projects, and data projects. Mm-hmm. So when you create a data development project, it's really just a folder. Mm-hmm. Eclipse provides a workspace. When you start it up, it says, what folder are we going to put our work in? And then your project is a subfolder in that same workspace.
Right. So it's a folder, but I can't just put anything in that folder. It's like if I create a data development project, there are certain types of things I can place in that folder, like stored procedures
and
queries, user-defined functions, database things that belong in that folder.
Things that wouldn't fit in a Java project, and you wouldn't be allowed to put into a Java project.
Right. Right. So when this project thing is one of the things that makes people see the complexity of Eclipse, but also we have these things called perspectives and views and different ways I can arrange things on the screen.
Right.
And that's a source of some confusion to people who are not familiar with that environment. So can we talk a little bit about views and perspectives?
Right.
How that fits?
Eclipse gives you a window, and it's a window that I always tell students to maximize so it fills their whole screen, because there's so much going on in there. It's a complex environment. But within that larger window of Eclipse itself, there's a number of smaller windows, which we call views. And there can be a dozen or more views within a window, within Eclipse. And you can structure those views however you want. There will be some default in the way they come up, but you can move them around, resize them, add new views, remove views, and come up with your own perspective, which you can then save if you want to reuse that perspective in the future, or reset back to the defaults that Eclipse has set up.
So a perspective is really just an arrangement of the views on your screen.
Exactly.
Right? And the sizing of them and so forth. So IBM actually provides in the Data Studio, what ships with Data Studio, a couple of default perspectives. Like there's a data perspective, which has your database connections on the bottom left and your projects on the top left, and then an editor screen for typing queries and stored procedures. There's also a query tuning perspective, which is where they've taken the Visual Explain stuff from Visual Explain and the predecessors of that, and integrated that in so that I can tune queries right there in Data Studio. And that's kind of the future of all of these products that IBM has put out there that used to be kind of separate offerings. It's all being integrated into the Data Studio platform. So we have a database administration perspective, for stuff that DBAs would be, working with. There's a data perspective, which is more of a data development perspective. There's a query tuning perspective. And those are just different arrangements of the windows, right, or of the views within your window.
Exactly. So Eclipse can do a lot for the data developer, as well as providing the Java developer with all the tooling they need to create really any kind of Java application for the enterprise.
Well, and because in the IBM world anyway, the Rational line of products and Data Studio now are all based on Eclipse. They integrate together very well as well, right?
That's right.
So if I'm using ClearCase as my source management tool, I'm going to be able to check objects in and out of Data Studio very easily, because those are all just Eclipse plugins, right?
That was basically IBM's vision from the start. They call it role-based development. So you open Eclipse no matter who you are, and you pick a perspective based on your role, and it could be your role that day. Today I'm playing the DBA role, maybe I'm an application DBA, and tomorrow I'll be playing a developer role and tuning a query.
Right. I mean, so one of the important things to kind of, get at is for us DBAs and even mainframe developers that interact with DB2, we need to, at least on some level, become familiar with this Eclipse framework and the Data Studio line of products, because that's where IBM is going to continue to provide the free functionality. They have add-ons too that they'd like us to buy, particularly in the query tuning and database administration arenas. So the query tuner is one we could talk about just a little bit. When I write a SQL statement either in a stored procedure or just in a script, or I can pull it out of a package in my DB2 catalog, one of the buttons I can punch now is tune this query. And it'll take me to that old Visual Explain access path graph, which is a graphical view of the access path, and I can tune the query from there. There's also some advisors that are built into that, so I can say the one that comes for free is the statistics advisor. I can say, hey, what statistics am I missing in my catalog that would be helpful for optimization of this query? IBM also has other advisors like the index advisor that they'd like to sell you. But the nice thing about Eclipse is it's very modular, so you can take the free stuff if you want. You can buy a few of the add-ons if you want. It all integrates very, very well.
And that Type 4 driver is part of the picture.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because they've desired to keep at least the basics of Data Studio free, IBM will give you a limited use license for the Java Type 4 driver.
Top of the line.
Top of the line stuff, which is stuff people pay for, at least on the Z platform in the form of DB2 Connect. What it means is I don't need any middleware to deploy Data Studio on a developer's desktop and have them connected to DB2 Linux, Unix, Windows instances, or also DB2Z instances to do their development, query tuning, all that stuff in one place. I can literally do it now without buying anything, including DB2 Connect.
Can't complain about free stuff.
That's right. All I need to know is the IP address of my mainframe and the port number of the DB2 that you're talking to, and it works out of the box. So that's a significant improvement from the previous iterations of some of these tools, which required DB2 Connect or some kind of middleware to get from here to there. This thing really does just kind of work out of the box.
Sounds like IBM's moving in the right direction.
So again, the important thing to remember here is that as mainframe professionals or DB2 developers, Eclipse is something we need to become more and more familiar with. We've got some great offerings in the Themis curriculum that'll help you get there in the way of, we have one class we call Advanced Query Tuning with IBM Data Studio, which explores the query tuner portion in depth. We also have stored procedure options on DB2.9, which explores the stored procedure development portions of Data Studio. And we had a built-in debugger there, which is a whole nother perspective, right? The debugger perspective, which comes out of the Java world as well.
That's true.
Which allows me to debug stored procedures in real time in the product. So we got a lot of that in our course offerings that we talk about in some detail. So thanks for joining us for this talk today. I hope to see you in a class soon.
All right.